for driving business.
Hello there, a very good evening to you. Thank you so much for joining us this evening and for tuning in to Smart 24 TV. We do drive your business. My name is Anthony and this is The Point. And of course, on the show, we get to discuss various matters that do press in our society. And of course, you can join us on this program every Monday at 7 p.m. And to be part of the show, you can follow us on social media. That is at Smart24 TV. Now, that is on Twitter. You can also go to our YouTube channel. That is at Smart24 TV Live. That is where exactly you can find all your business content. Tonight's episode of the show will be, of course, getting into the drug effects, the narcotics, and how they affect society, how they affect our health, and of course, the regulations in Uganda concerning the illicit use of drugs. Illicit drug use in a nutshell is a very global concern, and Uganda is no exception, with quite a number of statistics pointing out to the fact that it is something we need to get to discuss at the moment. According to the Uganda Police Force's 2019 annual crime report, drug-related offenses accounted for at least about 8% of all the reported crimes here in Uganda. And also the survey conducted by the Uganda Youth Survey conducted in 2016 by the Uganda Youth Development Link at least revealed that 11.8% of young people aged between 15 and 24 reported to have used drugs, with cannabis being the most commonly abused substance. Now, joining me on the show tonight to discuss the topic is none other than Council Lufunya. Council Lufunya has been on the show before, and I'm very delighted to have him once again. Council Lufunya, you're most welcome back to The Point.
Thank you very much, Anthony. I'm most delighted to be here as well. It's quite interesting, the topical discussion today. Good evening, viewers, and I hope you enjoy the show.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, Council, let's start with what you think, your thoughts on the prevalence of illicit drug use in Uganda today. When you look at the trends, there has been a very, very high surge in the number of cases, especially of mental health, depression, and so many cases that are now linked to drug abuse, right? People feel like this is the haven they run to, celebrities and non-celebrities, young people, old people. You find we had a shisha law in place, but currently you see shisha everywhere in the clubs. It looks like people are getting into the comfortable zone with the illicit drug use. What do you think is the prevalence of this act in Uganda?
Well, I must admit, I have a 4-year-old daughter, and while we were going to church on Sunday, she sang a very popular song these days called Chai Wen Jai. And in my view, I took keen interest in why a 4-year-old would be making reference to a social way of life, our social way of life, and in respect to narcotics and controlled substance like NJI. Now, you've asked me a question that is very, very important, and that question is the prevalence rate. And our viewers must understand that where you see poverty, where you see broken families, where you see unemployment, and that makes almost 80% of Uganda, the existence of drug abuse is at that percentage. So the prevalence rates are very, very high. Actually, we cannot gauge them through statistics, but it's a way of life. It's not surprising to find single women along the streets of Rubaga, Chisenyi, Kawempe, Kamocha, Chikaramoja, Kosovo, selling marijuana, Mira, Molondo, Enchwiri, and all that, because it is a way of life. Whereas previously, before the coming in force of the Constitutional Court decision, the law has been in place. But if you look at our nightlife, the smoking of shisha, the smoking of what they call vaping. Vaping is, I think, smoking electric cigarettes. It's considered stylish. It's considered dope. It's considered vibe. It gives you a certain status in society, and it has been sanctioned by Ugandans, and actually most recently the Constitutional Court, that let this kind of practice or vices continue without any sort of regulation and control. That's what we read from the events that just happened in the Constitutional Court. The question as to whether the policy decision made by those in authority is going to be helpful, or what needs to be done, can be discussed later at a later stage in the show. Yes.
Well, important, very important insights there. Now, Council Ufnia, when you look at currently the prevalence rates, like you've mentioned, they are quite high. What do you think are some of the visible symptoms in our society that show that actually drug abuse is something biting us as a society? Because remember, like I mentioned in the first place, when you look at health cases, mental health cases, nowadays they're on the rise. Many people are in Butabika, not because maybe something happened, but because of depression, because of various other problems that link to mental health. And these are around especially drug abuse, because most people find it the only way to overcome the current stress. When you look at what's happening in our country today, Council, we've had shootings of 3 people currently.
Yes.
And more probably that we might not have known about. But all these are linked to mental health, financial instability, and I don't know if drug abuse could also be somewhere. But get to throw some light on what you think are some of the symptoms in our society of drug abuse.
You see, the law that was nullified by the Constitutional Court had adverse effects once the law was declared non-existent or unconstitutional. If you look at those who participate in the trade of drugs, and this is controlled substance, we are talking about cannabis, we are talking about weed, or what they call njai. You're talking about rat poison mixed with weed, which is commonly referred to as enchwiri, or chicken. Some others like to refer it there. Then mira, or cat, that is referred to as enkwacho. Even before I forget, one artist sang that ebiduma abayaye because ali enkwacho. So it has been normalized, but you see, the effect of uncontrolled drug abuse, because the law in place was to control psychotic drug related, because you see, the law was based on scientific research, that what comes out of the result of abuse of these drugs, if they're not controlled and regulated, is we are going to find very many mental health cases, and that affects the health sector, which is currently limping. We even have striking doctors. Now, when you go to the aspect of crime, homicides, the most important aspect of a crime is the state of mind. Now, homicides have been induced. I'm talking about the police officer who shot the Indian businessman. I'm talking about the bodyguard Because you see, this drug enhances and gives confidence. That's what the scientists have told us. And that's why its supply and usage should be controlled at all times. Now, if you open it, if you have a blank check like Uganda right now is, the police reports that we'll hear next year will have an increased number of homicides. Now, if you look at the economy in itself, the illicit drug business is a multi-billion-dollar
business.
When you see opium and cocaine being confiscated at the airport and immigration centers, these kilograms are costed in millions of dollars. 1 kg of opium, of cocaine, is almost equivalent to $1 million US. Now, you look at the statistics on how many kilograms have been confiscated at Entebbe from Uganda as export, because Uganda doesn't have tight enforcement mechanism of the law. We have an issue. We had earlier an issue of enforcement of the law itself. But now that the law is even non-existent, expect that drug importation and exportation of drugs using Uganda as a melting point is going to increase, because you have very many porous borders and very unstable countries like South Sudan, like Congo, like Central African Republic, and anywhere. So that is going to increase the issue of money laundering. The law could even be used to trace properties of those engaged in the business of illegal drug trafficking. But that does not exist. So the economy will suffer at the expense of those who do business genuinely. But there are visible symptoms. Those who chew miraa or enkwacho, if you look at the state, their dental state, because the drug has the capacity to destroy the dental and cause those adverse health issues. I think that was not looked at, and most youth consider it stylish in chewing these plants, yet it's highly risky. When you look at domestic violence, because these are enhancement drugs, in law we call it Dutch courage. I remember when we were youthful and you had interest in a girl and didn't have the guts to approach that girl, you must collect courage to go there. So for a person who would want to do something that is out of the extraordinary, will have to use the services of this drug to do what we see as very rare but abnormal activities, murder. Now, when you look at how our youth are using social media and how they boldly abuse it, they abuse authority, they crack our way of life. Our social moral fiber has been destroyed because of the prevalence rate of abuse of these narcotic substances. But you see, you cannot, as a country, allow a situation where drug lords are more powerful than government. Abuse of narcotic drugs is a security threat. It's a threat to the defense and security of the country. An example, the Eldora drug cartel in Mexico has even cut off some areas of the state of Mexico where even government has no presence. If you look at the Tamil Tigers, you don't even have to go very far. The Mungiki in Kenya here, the Chifesi here in Uganda. All these are examples or indicators that you cannot casually treat the issue of controlled substance without having regulations of government. So the list is endless. You know, as I was preparing for this show, I read the history of the Opium Wars, the first and second Opium Wars between China, Great Britain, and France. Exportation of opium became so advanced that the Chinese became so addicted to opium that when the imperialists, the British, came to conquer China, they lost the war because the young men could not fight. They were highly addicted to the opium, and they could not be enlisted in the army to fight for the sovereignty of the state. What happened? And these are true stories. These are not European history stories. China had to secede Hong Kong to Britain. So the territorial integrity of a nation can be lost because of the adverse effect or the unchecked effect of drug control. Because you see, drug cartels are powerful. They are more powerful than these third world African countries. The Tamil Tigers could operate airstrips and airlines, fighter jets in the state of Colombia. That's how powerful they are.
Yeah.
They would recruit young women into sexual slavery, organ trafficking, money laundering, and invest monies in Dubai. The power of the state can be lost, and this is ultimate. So anyone in government, the president included, must pay attention to how the issue of narcotics is handled, because the way it's being handled is being handled in a casual way. It's only until 1997 that Hong Kong got independence from Great Britain. 97, that's very recent. And right now, it's still a semi-autonomous territory of mainland China. That's how adverse the drug war, the opium war, the first opium war and the second opium war had an effect on the Chinese, because there was lack. They lost the war, and the adverse effect is their territorial integrity was tampered with. The same will apply to Uganda if those in authority think that allowing youth smoke weed publicly without being checked is good. Dembe, freedom. It will be freedom until crimes like homicide, bank robberies, abuse, computer misuse, sexual trafficking, human trafficking, you understand? And social uprising. Because once you allow them smoke the narcotics, they will get the boldness, what they call Dutch courage, to take up arms against the state.
Council of Nya, we're going to take a very short break. But our dear viewers, when we return, on the 5th of May, the Constitutional Court annulled the Narcotics, Drugs and Psychotropic Substance Control Act 2015, which was, of course, prohibiting, first of all, the sale and the use of narcotic drugs in the country. Justice Muzamiru Mutabula Chibedi was the one in charge of this ruling, and the claim he gave was the fact that the law had been passed without quorum, which is 1/3. However, there's a controversy from police which came out to say that they are going to continue their crackdown on all the users and sellers of narcotics using the National Drug Authority and Policy Act 1993. And this is where, Council, we need enlightenment on whether this is going to be actually what is going to be followed, or if they're even following the law. Anyway, my name is Anthony, and this is The Point. Stay with us. We'll return shortly.